back to Cityscape. In this episode of Secret People, we will cover Ayn Rand, a Russian-American writer and philosopher. To claim that Ayn Rand is a secret person can sound a bit strange to many. Her books have sold more than 30 million copies worldwide. Famous individuals such as Brad Pitt, Steve Jobs, Alan Greenspan, and Rand Paul are all big fans of this author. In New York City's Rockefeller Center, a giant Atlas statue stands as a symbol of Objectivism, Ayn Rand's philosophy, represented in her book Atlas Shrugged. The point I'm trying to make is that Ayn Rand is far from obscure. So why would someone like that be a secret person? Well, despite Ayn Rand's notoriety, her work remains mostly unfamiliar. People know of her name, but not her message. This episode will not focus on the Objectivism philosophy, which is a bit convoluted and rather long-winded. Rather, we will look at some key messages Ayn Rand would like echoed throughout time. As always, let's start with a brief background. Ayn Rand is actually just a pen name. Her real name is Elisa Zinovievna Rosenbaum. She was born to a Russian Jewish bourgeois family in Saint Petersburg, Russia. By the way, Saint Petersburg is also known as Leningrad. Rand's father was a pharmacist and businessman. During the Bolshevik Revolution under Vladimir Lenin, her father's business was confiscated, and the family faced desperate conditions, occasionally nearly starving to death. This dark experience under communism, an extreme form of socialism, would scar Ayn Rand for life. In late 1925, Rand fled Russia to the United States. She initially stayed in Chicago, then left for Hollywood, California, where she started writing plays. Fun fact, one production house Ayn Rand worked for was RKO, a company later owned by Howard Hughes. Small world. In 1943, Rand experienced her first major success, The Fountainhead, a romantic novel that took her 7 years to write. The Fountainhead became a worldwide success, selling over 6 million copies. 14 years later, in 1957, she would publish Atlas Shrugged, a book that is considered Rand's masterpiece. The book sold over 9 million copies and created a near cult following of Ayn Rand. Both The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged are novels, so they cannot just be summarized. However, I can share some key messages contained in these books, which are worthy of reviewing, especially in our time.
The smallest minority on earth is the individual. Those who deny individual rights cannot claim to be defenders of minorities.
Ethnic minorities have become the focus of our time, but Ayn Rand gives us a sharp reminder that the smallest minority is the individual. The individual has rights that must be protected from mob rule or collective intentions. A society that focuses on protecting individual rights will automatically protect its minorities. However, a society that distorts individual rights in an attempt to equalize social imbalances will become a land of tyranny for all within it.
Wealth is the product of man's capacity to think.
Producing a product is very difficult. It requires skills, patience, sacrifice, and there is always the risk of failing. It is nearly impossible for someone who's never built a product to understand the pain required to run a new enterprise. People who work for the government or for an established company do not face such challenges. Ayn Rand reminds us that industrialists are individuals who deserve our greatest respect and should be cherished for their efforts and courage. It is also important to note that not all rich people fall in that category. Many get rich by crook, speculation, or cronyism. But in a case where the wealth is righteously earned, that act should be applauded, and a fortune amassed, no matter how large, should remain the entrepreneur's property rather than be confiscated through taxes.
A government is the most dangerous threat to a man's rights. It holds a legal monopoly on the use of physical force against legally disarmed victims.
Most people view corporate entities with suspicion, yet they somehow fail to realize that the government is the biggest potential threat. This is because the government has a monopoly on force. Force that it does indeed use. It does not matter if a corporate CEO has billions of dollars. The government has all the guns. As the professor from the movie Starship Troopers said, violence is the supreme authority, from which all other authorities are derived. The government not only has a monopoly on force, it has a legal monopoly on this act, which means that whoever is in power can use violence without repercussions. History is littered with examples of mass violence committed by the government against their people. Yet, the public forgets over and over that the biggest potential threat to their well-being is the government. Rather than keeping governments in check, they call for an indiscriminate plunder of the rich. Meanwhile, the government grows stronger and stronger.
Run for your life from any man who tells you that money is evil. That sentence is the leper's bell of an approaching looter.
It only takes a brief revisit of barter and trade to realize how magnificent a tool money is. Money is not just a universal means of exchange, but it is also information. Price tells you the energy required in terms of materials and labor to produce a good or provide a service. Without this price mechanism, such cost calculus cannot take place, and resources would never be used efficiently. Few people realize this deeper aspect behind a symbol we call money. Ayn Rand warns us that anyone who despises this incredible invention is thoughtless at best or dangerous at worst. There is nothing fictitious about money. It is a symbol that represents energy. Since we all need energy to operate in this world, a person who claims to be against this natural phenomenon is either naive or has sinister intentions. Money that is honestly earned indicates value provided to the community. There is nothing evil about that. Links to Atlas Shrugged and the Fountainhead are in the description. As parting words, I do want to warn that Ayn Rand's philosophy can be a bit simplistic and extreme at times. To balance this equation, I will end this episode with 2 clips showing the bright and dark side of Ayn Rand.
The businessman is the man who has to use his mind to deal with reality, to study facts, to produce material goods. He is the man who serves as the transmission belt of the discoveries of science and carries the products of science to all levels of society. He is the one who takes the invention of a theoretical scientist or of an inventor, transforms them into useful products, and putting them into mass production makes them available to all levels of society. The businessman is the man who has achieved the enormous, historically miraculous rise in the standard of living of mankind during the 19th century.
But now as to the Indians, I don't even care to discuss that kind of alleged complaints that they have against this country. I do believe, with serious scientific reasons, the worst kind of movie that you have probably seen, worst from the Indian viewpoint, as to what they did to the white men. I do not think that they had any right to live in a country merely because they were born here and acted and lived like savages. Americans didn't conquer. Americans did not conquer that country. Whoever is making sounds there, I think, is hissing that he's right, but please be consistent. You are a racist if you object to that.
See you next time.